When is an aquarium mature? It's a really big question, and lots of people who are new to the hobby actually don't know, or they're given advice in their aquarium store like it's mature after 2 or 3 weeks and you can add fish straight away. Well, we as experienced aquarists know this not to be true. In some cases, a tank can take years to be mature. The one behind me is actually a really good example of this. So this tank here has been running for 3 years, and I would tell you that this has only really become mature in the last 6 months. Before that, it has been through lots and lots of different stages. You have to think of an aquarium as an ecosystem, and an ecosystem takes a long time to develop. So a good example of how the ecosystem works is this corner here. In this corner, we can see a little window into the inner workings of this saltwater aquarium. There's lots of little spaghetti worms, we've got sponges, we've got snails, feather dusters, lots of amphipods and copepods. You can see them all going about their business on the glass. And what are they doing? Well, spaghetti worms are clearing up leftover food and detritus. The amphipods and copepods, they're helping to clean up the algae that's forming on the glass. Now, I don't clean this corner. Obviously, there's less light going in here, but they're doing a good job munching away on the algae. Now, if you think about that and scale it up to my entire aquarium, all of those organisms are throughout this tank and they're helping to keep it stable. They're doing their jobs, they found their niche, and they're going about their business keeping this tank mature. Basically, that's what maturity is your aquarium is at a point where you don't have to put much input into it to keep it ticking over. Now, obviously we do water changes and we feed our fish, and it's the ability of the tank to actually handle that which gives it or shows you its maturity. And that's why with a new aquarium, with a tank that you've just set up within the last month or so, you'll notice that you get lots and lots of problems when you do subtle changes. For instance, in your new tank that's a month or so old, you add another fish, or your first fish for instance, and what happens is you'll tend to get an algae bloom, or you get that white milky water, and that's because your aquarium hasn't got the bacteria and the small life form to support that fish. That would indicate that your aquarium hasn't matured. But if we take that tank in a year or two's time, adding an extra fish isn't really a problem. You can add it in, you don't get any issues with your water quality, and it's just really a simple process. So between that first month and the year, something's happened to make your tank be more robust in that kind of situation. And what's happened is your tank has matured. So in my opinion, maturing your aquarium is actually the balance of having all these little bugs and things living in your aquarium, also in your filter. As you know, you need to add filter bacteria to colonize your filter, which then breaks down the waste that your fish produce and also the waste of the food that you put into your aquarium. So is there a way to speed up the maturation of your aquarium? Well, there is actually, yes. In a reef tank, and also sometimes in freshwater tanks, you can take live rock, which is already mature, full of the good stuff, and transport it from an old developed aquarium into your newly set up aquarium. And what that does is it gives you a good basis of all of the bugs and bacteria that you need to get your tank mature. You can do the exact same thing with filter media, and some people do this actually. They put their media from their new tank into a filter of an already established aquarium, and then they transplant that into their new tank when they set it up. And in that way you can almost get a fully mature filter without even having to wait, because it's already been in that mature environment and soaked up all of the goodness. But with an aquarium, you'll tend to get to that point and it just feels right. You've got into a routine of your water changes, your fish are always healthy, you never get any problems with your water quality, and your filter and everything else is just ticking along pretty happily. And that's the point of you being mature. I don't really think there's a real measurable way of determining when your tank is mature. I guess, let's say, if it gets to a point where you can probably overfeed your fish for a few days and absolutely nothing happens, then your tank's probably mature, because it has all of that bacteria and everything else to handle these spikes. And rather than having peaks and troughs, you're more of a steady sort of sailing on your aquarium. But it is a hard question. I've done a video before on when to tell if your reef tank is mature, and my answers are basically the same. Look out for the colonisation of copepods, amphipods, and all the other little bugs and beasties that live in our reef tanks. These are very good signs to tell whether your tank is on the right course, especially sponges. Sponges only really appear in a healthy and happy tank. But there is no real magic bullet. The best course of action for any aquarium is just taking your time. Like I said, this has taken me 3 years to get to this point. It is not a race when it comes to aquariums, especially reef tanks. You just have to take your time and be patient. Your tank will mature when it's ready.